Hi, everyone. We are going to do some learning together yet again. And in this session, we're going to take a look at how to create a digital breakout that you can share with your students. My name is Nikki Wickford, and in this part one, we're going to take a look at just the concept of digital breakouts and some of the first steps in order to create one. Now, before I continue, you will notice that the link to the slides that I'm going to use is there. And if at any point you want to refer back to these slides, that link will stay live. For the reason that there are a number of links and resources that are hyperlinked in this series of slides that you might find useful as you go through designing one for yourself. Now, I want to note a couple of things as we get started. Now, first of all, you will notice in the description that this is an advanced session. And it's not advanced because we are taking a look at super technical things or that require a lot of skill. But what makes this more advanced is that we're using a number of applications to create this product. And there are a number of balls in the air. So we have kind of multiple things that we need to remember as we are designing this breakout. So, like I said, in part one, we will get started and then we will complete our work in part two. But before I continue, digital breakouts are good for any grade level. I've used them as young as grade 2 and seen them work with grade 1 and can work all the way up to high school and even beyond. And because of the nature of them, where you're just kind of working through clues and solving problems and trying to achieve a goal, this is appropriate for really any content area, any subject you can use this strategy for. And especially as you start to think of assessment, I'll touch on that in a moment, but this could be a really effective assessment strategy as well. Now, in our time together in this session, we're going to take a look at really two things. One is, what is a digital breakout? Kind of how does it work? And then two, we will spend the bulk of our time really considering clues. What types of clues can we make? What applications can we use? And so we will spend some time together taking a look at that. Now, breakouts, what are they? Several years ago now, you would have noticed that on the market there were escape rooms, breakout rooms. They became quite popular. So as a group or even as an individual, you could go to a location, pay money, and you could be locked in a room and be given a scenario, and you've got 45 minutes to see if you can locate clues, solve them, and get out. And then, so over the last couple of years, this has been adopted for an education setting, both in the form of using a lockbox with a series of locks that you can customize, and then transforming that almost into a digital platform. So creating a breakout type scenario, but making it digital. Now, the nature of a digital breakout, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. So one, the engagement is high with these types of activities because there is a challenge that students need to solve. And so there's lots of potential for practice, for review, for study, for demonstrating that you know something inherent because there's a challenge that students are trying to solve. And so kiddos are often willing to go all the way to the end, going through these practicing or review activities, just so that they can say, I got it, I broke out, I've solved the clues. The other thing that this is really good for is assessment. Because of the nature of a digital breakout, where you break out or you don't, you solve it or you don't, you achieve the challenge or you don't, it's actually a really great assessment and almost in a mastery type way. The kids are able to demonstrate to you, yeah, I totally understand this concept, or I haven't been able to break out and actually I don't understand this concept. And so you get a clear indication of whether kiddos get it or don't just by the nature. And yet at the same time, because the engagement level is often high, they're willing to persist through some of these activities And then you can help support where you need to. The other lovely thing is that once you've created a digital breakout, you can kind of just wash your hands of it and let it go. It requires very little maintenance once it's created. Yes, it takes a bit of time, but once it's finished and you've reviewed it, you can share it with really any group of students over the course of time, and it maintains itself unless you make changes to some of the clues or some of the questions. Now, just as we kind of think through, like, okay, so what could I use this for? Let me give you some suggestions. So, in English language arts, it could be, as you think of some of that content knowledge, it could be vocabulary or terminology. It could be maybe theory related concepts. So, we're studying the short story and we're studying elements of plot, and so we need to understand and we need to have that content knowledge before we move on. Film theory, it could have to do with, even as you're thinking back on novels or stories that have been studied, you could use a digital breakout for some of that knowledge that the kids had to, or that the students had to know. For social studies, it could be, cultures that students are exploring. History, it could be terminology again, or vocabulary. And even as you start to explore math and science, these are brilliant for math and science, because as students have to practice concepts, so whether it is shape in space or trigonometry, or just there is that element of practice and having to continue practicing fractions to demonstrate that they understand and can do this concept, that can be built into a digital breakout, um, and as part of an activity. So really strong for particularly math, science, kind of CTS and options, and can be also really beneficial for humanities as well, with some of that content specific content. And so now as we continue, here are some of the features that you will want to keep in mind for a well-designed breakout. One, it is a good idea to have a good, strong, crafted challenge scenario. In other words, what's the problem? What do the kids have to solve? What are they breaking out of? If there isn't a scenario that they're having to achieve or solve, then often it is just an enhanced web quest. And if it's a web quest, again, engagement starts to wane and is lessens, and students may not persist as you want them through all the way to the end. So having a really well designed just scenario that they have to work through is good. Two, you want to target particular learning outcomes. And so there is something you have in mind what you want the kids to be able to demonstrate to you. So it's no fancier than just any sort of assessment task that you have for students. What do you need them to demonstrate? And so that is what you have in mind as you are crafting a digital breakout, because that's then what everything is designed around. And then last but not least, you want it to be well organized. While yes, you can have a series of clues that lead students down rabbit holes, and and they have to really persist in getting through it. The fact of the matter is that if it is not well organized and focuses more on the trickiness of the clues, then you're losing sight of the content. You're losing sight of the curriculum. So it might be fun and it might keep them busy for a time, but it then is not as true as an assessment that you can use to judge whether a student understands content. And so just to kind of equate it a little bit, it's kind of like when you ask students to create a PowerPoint presentation and they are spending more time on the font and the transitions than they are on the content. And so while yes, it's fun, and it can be really well packaged, but the content and the curriculum gets lost. So it's well organized in that it's the content at the forefront, and we're not just having all of these little rabbit trails off to where the focus is on the maze. Okay. Now let's talk about the logs. You can have any number of locks in a real lockbox, like for kind of like a Breakout EDU lockbox in a physical space. There's a key lock, a letter lock, digit lock, a direction lock, and there's even some additional ones as well that you can add. But in a digital platform, then these four are the key ones that you'll want to keep in mind: a letter lock, a number lock, a direction lock, and a color lock. Okay? And so now that does not mean that the focus needs that for you can only use letter locks for humanities focused tasks. You can in fact use a variety of these locks, and it doesn't matter what the content area is. It just matters how you design the clue to solve the lock. Okay, and so we'll take a look at some examples shortly. All right, now just like when you create an assessment, you plan first and then create it. What do you want it to look like? And then you create it. And a digital breakout is no different. You do want to plan it first, have it organized in your head, and then you want to create it. And so this is a resource found from ditchthattextbook.com. That is basically just a quick template that you can, again, if you access these slides, you can click on it and you can make a copy for yourself and use it to plan through this digital breakout. So the first and forefront is what is the learning goal, and then you create the story around it, and you can even write some sample questions as well. You'll notice here that on the second slide, if you do use this template, that I do recommend between 3 and 5 locks. Anything more than 5 starts to get too big for the kiddos to persist through to the end. And anything less than 3 is just a lot of work for only 2 clues or 2 locks. Now, I would say the exception to that would be for primary. If you just want to keep it simple to start and only give them 2 locks that they need to solve, that's okay. But certainly grade 3 and up, they should be able to handle between 3 and 5. Okay. And then again, if you do use this template, you'll notice that you can just kind of identify what types of locks, and keeping in mind that variety can be really helpful. Okay, so as we continue, here is a sample of just some planning that I have put together for a sample breakout. So I could say the curricular focus is grade 5, the weather cycle in science, and it's basically just a review activity. So I want the kids, we've already studied the water or the water cycle, and I want them to be able to demonstrate what they know. And here would be a scenario. Now, in this scenario, Mrs. Filipchuk is a school principal, and so the students would be familiar with Mrs. Filipchuk. They know that she loves to garden and that she has a really lovely one. And so there is an element of this that is both fun and familiar. And the more that you were able to pull in some of these fun and familiar elements, the higher the engagement. And again, the more that the kiddos are willing to persist and solve it all the way to the end. Okay, so I'll give you a moment just to read through that one. I've suggested even ones that include maps of your local area. You can use math with that. So there's any number of things that you can choose and you can pull in to make it both fun and familiar. You can play with aspects of time and time travel, so just to make it fun. Now, the first thing that you are going to do before you start do after your planning is create a brand new folder in your Google Drive, because you will end up having a number of pieces to this digital breakout. You might have Google Drawings items, you'll have a Google form, you'll have a Google site when it's done. The best thing to do is to keep it all contained. So you're going to go ahead and create a folder in your Google Drive somewhere where it suits you. And then everything that you create for this particular breakout is going to be stored in that folder. I've had some digital breakouts that I've created that have had anywhere between 5 and 15 different items, depending on what's in there. So again, just something to keep in mind. You'll want to keep organized and keep it all together. Now, as we start to take a look at what we can create the clues with, here are a number of options. You can pull video from YouTube. So it could be a video about a particular area of content, and there might be something that you do with a clue inside the content of the video. You could make a video for yourself. You could use Screencastify to make your own video, and that you drop clues in through the video that you create. You can use hyperlinks. You will find that you do use hyperlinks extensively in digital breakouts, and so that is an option. Google Docs, I've used Google Docs in the past. Sometimes it's particularly with poetry. And so there's just a series of texts that I want the students to look at. And it could be as simple as, that they have to read through this poem, and then there are particular features in the poem that they have to pay attention to, and that those contribute to, those are a clue to figure out the lock. Google Forms are really great. And even if you have pull in a video from YouTube and have to solve a series of questions in a Google form, and the answers, if you get them all correctly, perhaps that is the lock. It could very well be that you provide feedback on the back side of the form, and that the kids have to then view their responses in order to get that feedback, and the lock is hidden somewhere in that feedback. So there's a number of different things that you can do. I'll show you some examples. Google Maps. Google Maps can be pretty powerful, especially if you create your own maps with your own markers, and you can play with math and things like that. JPEGs. I will play with JPEGs lots. I'll pull them into Google Drawings to manipulate them, or even just kind of isolating pieces out of images. And then, but I would say by far the tool that is easy to use but really effective in creating clues is Google Drawings. It gets the gold badge, the golden seal, that you can use exclusively Google Drawings to create the clues, and it can be a super successful digital breakout. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of examples, but I'm going to certainly, if you don't know where to start, you don't know what to use Google Drawings and Google Forms. And it might just be, if you have 3 clues, do 2 drawings in 1 form, call it a day, and it's done. Okay? All right. So this is an example of a Google drawing, and I'm just going to open it up here. And the Google Drawings is so potentially powerful for a couple of reasons. One, you can manipulate. There are opportunities to manipulate in a Google Drawing that isn't there in a Google Doc. The other reason that is really powerful is that because you've got this free space along the side that you can kind of hide things on. So even though, yes, the bulk of what you need is here, there are other spaces that you can use. So for example, this is a simple Google Drawing that I created even just for vocabulary, where here's a definition and here are the terms. Now, you'll notice that the terms are in different colors, and so my guess is that you are thinking, oh, this is probably a color lock, and you're probably right. And so the kids would have to match the appropriate term to the definition that's given in each of the clouds. But then the challenge is kind of like, now what? Well, then there's this random pigeon down here. And so if I scroll down, there's another clue here. And so the kids would have to then solve this code to figure out, and this would then tell them what is the order that they need to put these colors in order to open that particular lock. Now, before I forget, you're probably asking me okay, where did you go to get this? How many hours did you spend? I'll tell you, I spent 2 minutes. So let me just go back here. I forgot to mention a resource or two. So I'm just going to pop out of these slides here so you can see. In this series of slides, I've given you a number of resources, like I said. And so even here, I've linked that, yes, it's Google Maps, but what's really important about this one is you're creating your own maps. And you can either do that by typing out mymaps.google.com, or by going into Google Drive and then clicking New, More, and then Google My Maps, and you can create your own map with your own pins and your own prompts and your own text. And so there's some fun things that you can do with that. But the other thing I want to point you out to is that there's another resource where it provides about at least 20 different applications and websites that you can use just to design fun things that you might include in this challenge. And so just want to note that it is created by digthattextbook.com. And so you can create a fake Twitter tweet, fake Facebook generator, a tile puzzler. I used in order to create that secret message, the ABC yeah, and you just open it, type in your message, and then save it as an image. Newspaper clipping generator. And so if you go down here, there's any number of different things that you can create fake text messages. So like I said, a whole bunch of different things. Like here's your ransom kind of note creator, so that's kind of fun. So instead of having to create everything from scratch, there are a number of different things. Free online receipt maker, so these can be really fun little things to rely on. And so that's where I created this little beauty down here, and then I just pulled it in. So this is simple. It is really just it's matching, and then the kids have to get that clue down there in order to know what order to put the colors in. But you could even play with, instead of making it a color, you could make this capital, and that each word has a capital in it, but they only know that the words that are being used are only the capitals that they use, and then you might put it that they have to rearrange the letters into a word. So those are a couple of different ideas that you can use. And if I go back here, another idea, and like I said, Google Forms, Google Forms, Google Forms. You can do so many things with it, even if it's fractions or manipulate, like 10 frames and cycles, butterfly cycle, life cycles, water cycles, putting things in order. And because you can hide things around your border, then there's some fun things you can do with that. Okay, another example is even just using Google Forms. And so I'll show you an example of this. And so what the students would do if they went here is they, would kind of go through and have to solve these questions, and they'd see if they could answer them. And I'm just randomly picking them here, and then I'm going to click submit. And so it says your response has been recorded, and then there's two links here. There's either view the score or submit another response. So I'm going to say view score, and just to see, and I can see that I got 3 out of 6. I got 3 wrong and 3 right, and oh, and look at that. And so I even included here is some feedback that if I got this question correct, there's some additional feedback. And so here's a video on the water cycle, and I put 212, and that could be a hint that there's a word at 212, that is the lock. That is what they use to break the lock. But it could even be things like that they have to get every question correct, and that you put a specific, maybe it's a sentence that they need, or it's a letter, or it's a number that they need in each of that feedback places, and they need all of them correct, and they need all of those letters or numbers, and then that is how they break the lock. So let me just show you real quick on how the heck I did that. And certainly there are other videos I've created around Google Forms. That you can take a look at, that'll take you through specifically more features in Forms, but I'll point to a couple real quick. So the first thing you'll know is that in settings, I've given the students, I'm not limiting it to one response, and it does not require a sign-in. And the other thing is that I release the grade immediately, so they can go in and review their answers very quickly. and then I show the link to submit another response. I want them to be able to submit another response in the case that they didn't get all of them right, because that's the point. I need them to get it all right because that's the assessment part. And so those are some features that you will want to keep in mind. And the other thing is that if I want there to be feedback when they get it correct, that when I go answer key, I add answer feedback. And so anytime they get a correct answer, then here's what you get. So it could be a word, you could have a sentence that it kind of provides through each question. It could be, I gave them a video that they had to go watch. It could be a letter, a number, anything you want. But you can play with that. Okay. All right, so that is Google Drawings and Google Forms. And here are, if you pop into these slides, here's some really good examples of other digital breakouts. And the reason I've given these examples is because you can kind of take a look at you can take a look at the organization of the way it's been set up. And the other thing is you can take a look at the clues. And the clues give you some good ideas on the types of activities you can have the students do. So something as simple as, if I pop into the Swedish chef here, something as simple as, again, here's a copy of that receipt maker. If I scroll down, I can see here the clues here, so I can open up any one of these. This particular one is about fractions. And so if I open this up, I can see that there are two pieces. Here's that text message creator, and these two pieces work together in order, and I have to use both of them and make sense of both of them in order to get the lock to break or to open a lock. Okay, so you can take a look through those, and that'll give you some ideas on how to create your own clues. But like I said, if you're stumped, start with the Google Drawing. And if you're thinking in your head, I want to create 3 clues, do 2 drawings and 1 form. Okay. The key is keep it simple. If you make it too complicated, well, and actually let me back up and say, you might think in your head you are making it super simple for the kids. The fact of the matter is that they will still find it hard and challenging. And so if you think it's hard, they are going to think it's very difficult. So keep it simple, especially as you are just in the beginning stages of designing them. It is better to have it too easy and have them all be successful than make it too hard and stump them, and then they are doomed, and they don't ever want to do digital breakouts again because there was no success. Okay, so keep it simple. Keep the organization simple. Keep the clues simpler than you think that they need to be. They don't need to be complicated. You just need to design elements, activities for them to practice their content. So it's think of it that way. You were only designing activities where they need to demonstrate they understand something. So it could be fractions. It could be putting the water cycle stages in order. It could be, terminology for elements of plot. It could be identifying the sequence of events leading up to World War I, right? So again, it does not have to be difficult. Keep it simple, and you are just designing a couple of activities that they need to reinforce and show you that they know it. And then we will pull it all together. Okay, so here's the homework. So for those of us that are going to come back for part 2, in preparation for part 2, you will want to, first of all, complete your planning. Make sure that you have a really good sense of what is the content, what is the focus and the learning outcomes you need your kids to practice or at least demonstrate. What is the scenario? So what is the challenge or the storyline that you want the kids to kind of be immersed in? And then design and create your clues. So ultimately your activities. Okay. And then when we come back together, we will figure out how to create the locks and how to pull it all together. Now, before I let you go completely, here are a couple things I want to send you with. One is there is a spreadsheet of a number of digital breakouts already created by teachers. These are not good to share. Our students will not be able to access these, but at the very least, you can take a look at them for examples to kind of get a good sense. You can take a look at particular topics, and they are, you can filter them. And then as you are designing and creating your clues, remember that Blackboard has created a number of templates in Google applications that you can just open and use for yourself. And same with Edmonton Catholic. So if we were to open up this one, we could take a look at the classroom templates that are already created. And I'm just going to scroll down to classroom resources and templates. They have been sorted, Edmonton Catholics in particular, they have been sorted by application type. So I might go specifically straight to Google Drawings and find a template that I want to use that would just be the basis for an activity. And I'll just wait for that to load. And then I'll just open it up and go file, make a copy. So there might be, here's here's a sorting activity. So I might go open this one up and find, yeah, that's perfect. I'll just kind of attach some additional features to it. But then there's the basis. And so I just go file, make a copy, and then would be the starter for one of the clues that I'm going to create. As always, remember that there is a series of YouTube videos. There is the Sturgeon Public Schools Learning Together YouTube channel, and there are a number of videos there already. How to create Google Forms, Google Drawings is there, so that could be helpful too as you are designing and creating. And then, as always, if you ever have any questions along the way, I am always available to answer and help as you design these challenges and these activities for your kiddos. So while that's loading, I will say goodbye for now, and feel free to reach out if you need anything along the way. Take care, stay healthy, and thank you for joining me and learning together again.